It was all ruined. The final word in the script was an exclamation mark to everything that had led to this point. I released my finger from the keyboard, and then it was over. To make any kind of sense of it, I need to go back 24 years, back to the year the pain started.
The year is 2001. A young Finnish studio, Remedy Entertainment, fresh off of their success of Death Rally, started working on a way more ambitious project. A gritty, noir third-person shooter by the name of Max Heat. At least that was the original plan, until it was later changed to Max Payne. The game had a decent budget for the time, and a big chunk of it went into graphics, so much so that it caused a bunch of delays. Funny thing is, they actually came up with the idea for bullet time before The Matrix, but since that movie dropped first, it kinda beat them to the punch. Still, Remedy leaned into it, and threw in some fun references. That kind of flexible mid-development pivot would cost millions now, so we never really see that anymore. I mean, today, you would be even lucky for the game to come out finished. The game they ended up putting out feels like one of the nerdiest shit you could ever play out there. I mean, it uses elements from comic books, Norse mythology, John Woo films, and gothic culture. There's a really down-to-earth feeling about it. The cutscenes, for example, used real-life photos of staff members, edited to give off that gritty comic book vibe. And that gives it a lot of charm. And not just that, but the setting and aesthetic of a snowy night in New York is one of the most visually comforting vibes in gaming.
The word on Lisa Punchinello was that she was a bit of a witch. The tarot cards on the kitchen table fit the picture. They weren't my kind of cards, but I was willing to take a crack at the hand Mrs. Punchinello had dealt. The first card was the Tower. Maybe that was supposed to be the Manor. It got easy after that. The devil was the master of the house, and death was me, coming for him.
Now, the plot of this game isn't anything crazy. It's a pretty straightforward revenge story. Max's family is killed by a bunch of junkies, and he ends up investigating a conspiracy around a drug that turns out to be connected to the murder of his wife.
All this because your wife stuck her nose into things that were none of her business.
What really carries the story is the characters and how they interact with its nerdy themes, especially Max himself. We are instantly introduced to the tragic side of Max's character. We understand that he carries a lot of pain, and yet he still comes off as charismatic and charming, especially when interacting with the two main supporting characters. Vlad,
Bang! You're dead, Max Payne.
A charming Russian mobster who understands that Max right now could care less about the law and only cares about getting revenge for his family. And you can see that Vlad kind of takes advantage of that and manipulates Max.
Change the ship back under my flag, maybe pop 2 in the Traitor Dime's head while you're at it. You'll get enough guns to start the apocalypse. You in or out?
This will be built on even more when we get to the second game. There's also Mona Sachs,
But dead or not, you've got the wrong guy.
a mysterious woman who Max meets funny enough at gunpoint, but even then there's instant chemistry between these characters.
Why not pool our bullets for this one?
I thought you'd never ask. My finger was starting to twitch.
How do you like your whiskey?
Mona seems to be after the same people as Max due to her sister being connected to the gang that are selling the drug. Yet she never really seems honest towards Max, another setup that the second game will deliver on. We understand so much about Max because we're constantly hearing his philosophical thoughts that you'll see spammed under every Max Payne video out there. And it's exactly because of that connection we have with Max that when we see him break down and talk about his wife, it fucking hurts.
The bullet holes were rubies on her chest, blood glowing on her ivory skin. She was so beautiful.
Even the bad guys in this game really stand out.
I have tasted the flesh of fallen angels.
Even though they're part of street gangs, they hang out in a gothic nightclub called Ragnarok. And you've got a guy called Frankie the Bat Niagara,
Niagara, as in you cry a lot.
who's obsessed with some goofy baseball cartoon character. Even the secret society that is behind it all calls its failed super soldier serum the drug that Max is investigating, Valkyr. under the secret government project Valhalla. These are supposed to be tough gangsters and evil rich people, but they're into this dorky shit. And Max doesn't just shrug it off, he leans into their world, he connects with it, even if he doesn't believe in it. Especially the idea of Ragnarok, which is a central theme in the game. Max doesn't care if he lives or dies through this, he's fine with this being the end. He's only focused on how many people he can kill before dying himself. And with the constant snowstorm, it really does feel like the end of the world. And yet, defying all odds, Max gets his revenge.
They were all dead. The final gunshot was an exclamation mark to everything that had led to this point. I released my finger from the trigger.
Now, even though the plot isn't the strongest part of the game, it still feels memorable because it doesn't take itself too seriously. Something that Sam Lake himself put great importance towards when writing a video game story is for it to be fun. It plays with meta ideas like the scene where Max is overdosing and realizes he's in a graphic novel.
There was something disturbingly familiar about the letter before me. The handwriting was all pretty curves.
You're in a graphic novel.
The truth split my skull open, the glaring green light washing the lies away. All of my past was just fragmented still shots, words hanging in the air like balloons. I was in a graphic novel. Funny as hell. It was the most horrible thing I could think of.
And then he realizes he's in a video game.
The truth was a burning green crack through my brain, weapon statistics hanging in the air glimpsed out of the corner of my eye, endless repetition of the act of shooting, time slowing down to show off my moves, the paranoid feel of someone controlling my every step. I was in a computer game.
It feels like an early version of what Alan Wake would eventually explore more deeply with its story. There's also all the little touches, TV shows and fake ads used as comedy bits, which is something that Remedy still does in their current games.
Oh shit, this coffee is shit.
Or as a reference to shows that inspired the writers. Or how old gods of Asgards are actually in the game's universe. Back then they were called Poets of the Fall and they hadn't even officially become a band before making a song for Max Payne 2.
In our headlights, staring bleak. In our headlights, staring bleak. Beer cans.
There was something disturbingly familiar about the letter before me. The handwriting was all pretty curves.
You're on YouTube video.
The truth was a burning green crack through my brain. A red line stretched across the screen, marking the start and end of my life. A clown dancing in front of everyone, begging for attention. I was in a YouTube video. Funny as hell. It was the most horrible thing I could think of.
Max Payne was originally published by 3D Realms and later had its console port handled by the main villain of this video, Rockstar. They eventually said fuck it and just bought the rights to Max Payne entirely, as long as Remedy made the second game for them. Rockstar put a lot of fucking money into this game, and now we had actual actors in the graphic novel cutscenes. But if you ask me, Sam Lake will forever be the face of Max Payne. And now the cutscenes looked way more polished and had way more going on in them overall. And even crazier, real-time cutscenes. The plot here feels a lot stronger. It kind of asks the question, what now? Ragnarok had happened, and yet Max is still here, still breathing. He never intended to live this long, and now that he's killed the people behind his wife's murder, he's forced to look back on everything he did. In the first game, Max was always moving, non-stop, shooting anything in his way, throwing away useful evidence, racing towards the end goal. But now he's reached it, and all that is left him is a Max more broken than ever. He leaves the DEA and tries to find peace in more familiar, quieter grounds, the NYPD, and is yet again thrown into another mystery when he discovers a mercenary gang dressed as a cleaning company, trying to take out people associated with Vlad and the Inner Circle, the secret society from the first game. Max in this game plays the role of the cop who is out of line, trying to look for answers while doing it in an unlawful way, and Detective Winterson, his partner, is supposed to be the character that keeps him in check. She is investigating a case around the senator's murder, and the prime suspect is none other than Mona Sachs, who, funny enough, wasn't gonna be in this game, since in the last game, the last scene we saw of her was her getting shot, but then her corpse disappears. Originally though, that scene was gonna end with her definitively dead.
The first game had been ambiguous on whether Mona Sachs even survived, though initially she had been killed off much more decisively.
In an early draft, Mona was one of them who got killed very clearly and conclusively on screen. And it was our graphic novel artist, Kia Kallio, back then, who felt kind of so sad about the fact that Mona would be killed that I decided to change it so that the elevator doors close and her body disappears, so there is an open possibility that she survived. And well, it's thanks to that decision that Mona ends up in such a big role in Max Payne 2.
Max, obviously not believing that Mona did it, ends up teaming up with her throughout the game to try and figure out how the murder of the senator is tied to the cleaning company. And yet Max always feels guilt about it.
I'm sorry.
Not only because he feels like he is betraying the law, but also because he feels like he is betraying his wife. He's haunted by the very idea of intimacy, and every time he follows Mona, it leads to more guilt. After saving Vlad from the cleaning company, Vlad tells Max they work for one of the mobsters from the first game, who is now trying to take out anyone he sees as competition, something that is revealed later in the game to be a complete lie. But Max believes him because he is the only friend he's got right now, and every time he talks with him, they understand each other, and his words always leaves an impact on Max.
Hypothetically, if the only choice you've got is to do the wrong thing, then it's not really the wrong thing. It's more like fate. You have to do what you have to do.
It's never that easy.
Of course. We agree to disagree.
He always just seems so nice to Max, telling him manipulative shit like,
Max, dearest of all my friends.
It is understandable why Max chooses to trust Vlad. As we reach the finale of the game, Winterson ends up holding Mona at gunpoint, with Mona begging Max to save her as she believes Winterson is connected to the inner circle. Max is given a choice: order versus chaos. The person with the law behind her, or the criminal who has never seemed to tell him the full story in both games. Max ultimately makes his choice.
Gunfire! This way, fast!
It is revealed later on that Mona wasn't lying. Winterson was corrupt. Yet it doesn't make Max feel any better, because it was less of a decision about who is right or wrong and more about who Max truly is. Although Winterson wasn't working for the inner circle, but for Vlad. And it's at this point that it's revealed that Vlad had been manipulating Max from the start. He was behind the cleaners, using them to wipe out the inner circle and take all the power for himself. That conversation they had earlier about fate, it was basically Vlad asking Max for permission to kill him. And it turns out that Mona was working for the inner circle. And at the end, when they are at the manor of the last remaining member of the inner circle, she is given a task to take out Max, but she can't bring herself to do it. She ends up getting shot by Vlad, who is there to finish the job and kill the last remaining person from the inner circle, leaving only Max as the last loose end. And at this point, we are at the final showdown, Vlad's mask is completely gone, and it's ugly.
Why don't you just die? You hate life. You're miserable all the time. Afraid to enjoy yourself even a little. Face it, you might as well be dead already. Do yourself a favor. Give up.
Ultimately, Max comes out on top. Vlad dies, but not before saying one last time,
Max, dearest of all my friends, I was supposed to be the hero.
Max holds Mona in his arms as she says her last words.
God, I turned out to be such a damsel in distress.
Max kisses her goodbye, and in the final moment, we see Max with an expression that somehow gives a sense of clarity, as if he finally processed and grieved through all the pain that he's gone through, having lost the two people that were still holding that part of his life. And then Max delivers the most hopeful line I have ever heard in a video game.
I had a dream of my wife. She was dead, but it was all right.
Sam Lake has said before that when they made this game, it was meant to be the end. A proper goodbye, and it makes sense. The ending points to Max finally finding peace, maybe even a better future. And then the third game came along and took a big fucking piss on that.
How Rockstar ruined Max Payne. It was a question that kept echoing long after the shooting stopped. I had followed every step, every blood trail and broken dream. I watched him lose everything, then watched him crawl through the wreckage, trying to remember why he ever fought in the first place. It felt like someone picked up his story halfway through, but they didn't understand it. They saw the blood and the bullets, but not the bruises beneath. They missed the point of the pain. I lit a cigarette I didn't want, tasted the smoke I didn't deserve, and stepped into the fire. If they'd ruined him, I had to see it for myself.
With Remedy having said their goodbyes to the IP, the future of the series was now in Rockstar's hand. Max Payne 3 was developed by basically every Rockstar studio out there and went through complete development hell. So it's safe to say we went from passionate nerdy guys to a more traditional AAA video game production. The game was originally supposed to release in 2009, but went through several rewrites, and the main Rockstar studio behind it, Rockstar Vancouver, was in the middle of shutting down. Remedy had almost no hand in the game. The only person who was still really involved was James McCaffrey, who is still giving it his fucking all.
So this was it. My easy retirement money, my blood-stained 401k, a chance to drink for free while chaperoning socialites around town and making sure the poor people didn't get too close. The brochure sure didn't mention any of this shit.
Rest in peace, King. Some Remedy staff were consulted, but it was basically to just give feedback on an already finished product. It was shipping whether they liked it or not. It doesn't feel like a coincidence that the plot of Alan Wake 2 is about a writer's work being taken from him.
It's not that. They're their own thing. They've gone with choices that are different from mine. I feel protective about my stories, and these adaptations... I don't know. I guess I just wish I could have been more involved in making them.
Look, there's a lot of care and passion that clearly went into Max Payne 3, but I can't help but find some of the decisions completely baffling based on the source material. Like, if there's one thing the first two games nailed, it's how visually comforting they were. Max Payne 3 decides to purposefully go for an ugly, harsh look to reflect the streets of Sao Paulo, and constantly throws these annoying as shit effects in your face, like it's trying to make your fucking eyes bleed. But there's stuff that I like about this game. Kind of.
There it was, the soundtrack to my life. And, for a few seconds, came harmony. Finally.
Max Payne games are built on the concept of bullet time, which is why it was one of the first to ditch the idea of hit scan and use genuine projectiles. Mechanically, this is easily the strongest in the series, with an all new improved physics engine that genuinely creates very cinematic moments, including the more scripted ones. Like the part where Max is hanging onto a helicopter and he shoots a goddamn rocket out of the air. That stuff is seriously awesome. Scripted events like these are something that Rockstar is generally really good at, but that is where we hit an issue with most Rockstar games. They can feel too scripted, like the game is holding you by the hand, and if you try to do your own thing for even a second, you're grounded. While the levels in this game aren't bad by any means, and do actually shake up the gameplay with some interesting ideas, they are very simple. And while the levels of the original games aren't anything crazy either, they still had a dynamic nature to how you explored them, having the game tell you very little in terms of where to go. And to be honest with you, this did cause moments where I was lost as fuck. But that's why pulling off level design like this is art, baby. Because you end up with way more engaging levels since you actually have to engage with them. And it makes you more engaged in the game overall. While the levels of Max Payne 3 aren't anything bad, they also just kind of get boring. And also you usually explored areas in the other games that were really interesting, like a funhouse for a cancelled show in the universe that is basically Twin Peaks. While the levels in Max Payne 3 are just different ugly places in Sao Paulo. There is also the New Jersey levels that take place in the past and kind of resemble the levels of the original game. And these are easily the best levels in the game by far. Now, while the original games aren't really the most crazy difficult games out there, they kept you on your toes because Max can basically get killed by a single buckshot to the face. Your only advantage was bullet time, so it almost became kind of a resource to manage, right? But in another kind of direction that I feel is pretty misguided, Max Payne 3 had a cover system that kind of ultimately broke the game. It also doesn't really fit Max, the guy who's always jumping in guns blazing, since he doesn't really care if he lives. And this section, to be honest, hasn't been that positive, but I will say overall I enjoyed the gameplay of Max Payne 3. The part that I overall did not enjoy is what we're about to get into.
I'd arrived in Sao Paulo a few weeks before. I was working a protection detail for the kind of people who need protection in a town like this. And what kind of town was this? One where I didn't speak the language and they didn't water down their drinks. So for now, we seemed to get along just fine. Of course, that was about to change.
The first thing we notice when talking about the story of Max Payne 3 is how different the writing style has become. Remedy's style was a lot more low-key, having its dark moments, but a lot more focused on a philosophical side, while not shying away from going into weird ideas. Think David Lynch. While Rockstar is a lot more grounded and harsh. Take for example these two similar scenes.
There was no glory in this. I hadn't asked for this crap. Trouble had come to me in big dark swarms. The good and the just were like gold dust in the city. I had no illusions. I was not one of them. I was no hero. Just me and the gun and the crook. My options had decreased to a singular course.
Here I was, about to execute this poor bastard like some dime store angel of death. And I realized they were correct. I wouldn't know right from wrong if one of them was helping the poor and the other was banging my sister.
Rockstar writing is very focused on showing a disgusting side of humanity, having its characters speak in a more raw way, with a lot of swearing.
Fuck up. Yeah, shut the fuck up!
They are really good at showing people at their lowest, so it made sense for them to show Max at his lowest point, and completely ignoring any kind of hopeful messaging that the second game had. Max left the NYPD and now just spends his days drinking and being unemployed. Relatable. Max ends up shooting and killing the son of a powerful mob boss and has to flee from New Jersey. So his good pal Passos, who he ran into earlier, tells him to join him in Sao Paulo in this bodyguard gig for some powerful rich people known as the Bronco family. The gig goes bad and a bunch of these people get killed. Max goes down another investigation to find out why they're being killed off, and ultimately finds out that he's being played by one of the people that he was supposed to be protecting, Victor Bronco, a corrupt rich politician who is the reason for why his family has been getting killed off throughout the game. Max spends most of this game just kind of not thinking about what's going on around him too much, and just kind of kisses asses for the first half of the game for the same type of people who got his wife killed. You'd think by now he'd be more suspicious of those types, but he's too busy just feeling sorry for himself. Most of Max's inner monologue in this game consists of him talking about how much he needs a drink or how much of a dumb fucking loser he is.
I'd been sitting at the bar for 3 hours, or about 5 years, depending on how you looked at things. I tried not to look at things.
It gets to the point where it just feels embarrassing to listen to. Like, Max has no charm or confidence or even a smart thought most of the time.
What do you think you were really doing in Panama?
I was drinking.
He's just some brute that can crack a funny joke about someone from now and then.
Nice echo. You gorillas have personalities of their own, or they just agree with everything you say?
And the supporting cast doesn't really help him either. We either have the dumb rich assholes or Passos, who kind of mirrors Vlad in the fact that he's another charming guy who kind of matches Max's energy and manipulates Max. But like when Vlad does it, it's impressive because we've been following a pretty clever Max. When you manipulate some drunken idiot, it doesn't really come off as that impressive. I did like that Max forgave him at the end, realizing he was also being played. It's a kind of a sweet moment. It's the best part in the story. There is also Wilson De Silva. He's kind of the usual cop character who wants to do good, but everyone is corrupt, so hey, fuck it. He does whatever he needs to do. He shows up about halfway and basically becomes the brain for Max, while Max goes in and shoots everyone he sees. Which, look, it is very much in line with how Max has been so far. But there was never really a point where I thought of Max as someone who's a dumbass. Yes, he went into everything guns blazing, but when it came down to it, he's always made the smart choice and always had something smart to say. Look, I'm not saying that this is some unrealistic case or anything for Max to get this bad after the ending of the second game, but it's just kind of a baffling decision to take the character in after everything we've been through. Especially because it's not even something new for the character. It just basically kind of feels like a reset to everything he's gone through, except he's just dumb now, which takes away what was likable about him. The ending of the game does highlight some of Rockstar's harsh writing, as we're pushed into some pretty dark topics. Max uncovers De Silva uncovers that Victor is behind an organ theft operation, which is supplied by prisoners from the police. Max takes down waves of corrupt cops, and as he's about to put down the commander, he has some sort of epiphany about how he's a monster who doesn't know right from wrong.
I wouldn't know right from wrong if one of them was helping the poor and the other was banging my sister.
Which it kind of walks back on 10 seconds later, since Max spares Victor. Something that I guess was supposed to be a kind of redemption for him, but it feels silly and not really earned. Later on, Victor is killed in jail, as his exploitation of the lower class catches up to him. A grim but satisfying end to his character. I ultimately like what the story of Max Payne 3 is saying. It's a game about class divide and American interventionism. My problem with it is how it delivers that message by completely assassinating Max's character. It feels like Rockstar was focused on writing Max to fit their harsh world, that they zeroed in on his guilt and trauma and nothing else. They missed the point of the pain. It feels like a game that wanted to take the Max Payne series and write it in a Rockstar way. And to be fair, that style is pretty popular and well liked and works in games like GTA or Red Dead. But I seriously cannot understand how anyone could see it as a good fit for the source material they chose to continue. From where we stand now, this seems to be the end for Max Payne, as there doesn't really seem to be any kind of continuation planned for him. There are the remakes currently in the works, but I doubt those will add much in terms of story. There is also Casey from Alan Wake 2, who is basically Max Payne, and I've honestly gaslit myself into thinking he is Max, because this ending we got right here, well, it ruined Max Payne.
I had a dream of Max Payne. He was ruined, but it was alright.